Okay, this is 100, 120 requirements. This is two boys. This is the Elizabeth Smart case. Beginning with a question for the record. Elizabeth, you have water in front of you in case you need it, and Kleenex there as well. At any point you need a break or would like to stop, let me know, and the court can help us with that. Elizabeth, what happened to you on June 5th, 2002?
A man broke into my house and held me at knife point and kidnapped me.
You indicated this was the day in which you were kidnapped?
Yes.
And at about what time did this occur?
In the early morning between 2 and 3.
And where were you?
I was in my bed at my house in my room.
And where was your sister?
Right next to me in the same bed.
Now, the individual that came in, do you now know that individual?
Yes.
Who is that individual?
Brian David Mitchell.
What did he do when he entered into the home?
He came into my room and held a knife to my throat and threatened me with my life and my family's life to come with him.
Did he do anything to determine whether it was you or your sister he was taking?
Yes.
What did he do?
He placed his hands on my chest.
What happened next?
He then put the knife up to my neck and threatened me and said that if I didn't come with him, told me to get up quietly, and if I didn't, then he would kill me and my family.
What was his voice like?
It was quiet. He was whispering it, but still loud enough that it could wake someone.
How was he dressed?
In dark clothes.
What type of clothes?
Sweats, sweatshirt, stocking cap, tennis shoes.
Was he carrying anything with him? You indicated a knife. Was there anything else he was carrying?
To the best of my memory, that's all I can remember.
We'll come back to that. What instructions did he give you? You indicated that he threatened you?
Yes.
And he threatened your family?
Yes.
Did he indicate to you that you had to grab anything?
He told me to get shoes. And when I reached for some normal slip-on shoes, he said to take the tennis shoes.
So you reached for slip-on shoes, and he directed you and indicated you should take tennis shoes. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ask him why he was taking you?
Yes, I did.
What did he say?
He said he was taking me hostage and holding me for ransom.
Would you later learn that that was a lie?
Yes.
Did he have the knife to your throat the entire time?
He had it to my throat, and then he held it to my back as he took me away from my house, and then as he took me up into the mountains.
Did he continue to threaten you as he took you out of the home and out in the mountains?
Yes.
Once he has you outside of the home, did you observe whether he was carrying anything with him? Did he have a flashlight?
Yes, he had a flashlight.
Did he have any coats? Any additional clothing?
I can't remember right now.
Any raincoats?
I just can't remember anymore.
That's all right. Did he have any socks? Did he ask you to put on socks?
No,
No.
no.
What did he say about that?
Well, he didn't. I just had my bare feet in my shoes.
Now, at some point, did he pick up water along the way? Do you recall whether or not he had placed any water outside?
No, I don't recall.
Elizabeth, was he concerned about being caught?
Yes,
What did he do to avoid getting caught?
he forced me to duck down behind some bushes before we crossed the street to wait for a car to pass by. And then we moved at a quick pace up the trail till we eventually turned off the trail and went up the back side of the canyon where nobody had been. I mean, there was no trail.
And where did he take you ultimately?
He took me in a canyon behind my house about 3 miles up close to the top of the mountain ridge. There were lots of trees surrounding, is where he had a camp he had been at for a while.
Where he had a camp?
Uh-huh.
And was that where Wanda was?
Yes.
Elizabeth, what was the first thing he did to you when he took you to the camp?
He took me inside the tent where Wanda then tried to force me to bathe. After arguing with her, she eventually just conceded to wash my feet. And then she told me to change out of my pajamas into a robe type of garment. And when I refused, she said that if I didn't, then she would have Brian Mitchell come in and rip my pajamas off. So at that point, I went ahead and put the robe on, after which he came inside the tent and performed a ceremony, which was to marry me to him. After that, he proceeded to rape me.
In those early days in that camp, what did he do to ensure that you didn't escape?
He had a big cable bolted onto my leg, which was strung between 2 trees. And there was a lock that would slide between the 2 trees that was able to take off. However, he had the key around his neck the entire time.
So there was a cable lock around your leg?
Well, the cable was bolted to my leg, and then there were 2 trees. There was another piece of cable strung through with a lock
Connected to the cable to your leg?
connected to both cables.
And about how long was that cable?
The cable that was on my leg was probably 10 feet long, and the cable that ran between the 2 trees was probably 15 to 20 feet long.
And at any point, did you ever have the key or the ability to take that cable off?
No.
Did he have the key on him?
Yes.
Elizabeth, was he aware police were looking for you and him?
Yes, he was.
Did he ever indicate to you that he knew he'd go to jail if he was caught?
Yes. The night I was kidnapped, I turned to him and I said, you know, you're going to go to jail for this if you get caught. And he said, yes. And I said that if you let me go right now, then, I would speak in his behalf. However, he did not. He didn't let me go, and he knew full well he was going to go to jail.
Now, you indicated that the first thing he did was to rape you when you were in this camp. Without going into any of the details, how often did he rape you, Elizabeth?
On a daily basis, up to 3 or 4 times.
And during your 9 months with the defendant, Elizabeth, what was the predominant focus?
Sex.
Would you agree that the defendant spoke religiously or about religion often?
Yes.
How is it that sex was his focus and not his religion then?
He used religion to get what he wanted. He had an excuse for everything he did with a religious side to it.
Was there ever a time he did not talk about sex or want sex?
No.
Did he ever give you alcohol or drugs in order to lower your resistance to have sex with him?
Yes.
Did he ever show you pornography?
Yes.
Why did he say he was showing you pornography?
He said that first I had to be humbled and to sink below all things before arising above all things.
Did he use religion to justify his behavior?
Yes.
Did he use religion to justify his behavior?
Yes.
How would he do that?
Anything that I showed resistance or hesitation to, he would turn to me and say, the Lord has commanded you to do this. You have to experience the lowest form to be the lowest form of humanity to experience the highest.
Okay, we're going to resume the African. It's not counted, so I don't know the exact speed. We're estimating about 120. It's probably 110 to 120, somewhere in there. Okay, back on the record with a question. Did he ever try to convince you that having sex with him was no big deal or normal?
Yes.
What would he say?
He said that's what a husband and a wife do.
Was the defendant crude?
Yes.
Was he vulgar?
Yes.
Inappropriate about sex?
Yes.
Would he use vulgar terms to describe parts of the male and female body?
Yes.
Now, there were times in which he would leave the camp, correct?
Correct.
And what would he say he was going to do?
He was going to minister to the world and to get supplies.
When he came back, what was the first thing he wanted to do or talk about?
Well, usually when he would go down, it was after a day or so not eating. So he usually would bring back something to eat, and then after that, he would go on to rape me.
Did he ever sing or shout what he intended to do to you when he returned to camp?
Yes.
And what did he say?
he did. He would come up the mountainside yelling, "I'm going to fuck your eyes out."
Did he say this on several occasions?
Yes,
Would he say similarly offensive, vulgar things to you?
yes.
Elizabeth, did you ever get a break from being raped by the defendant?
Well, yes, but it was when Wanda would get very upset with him. There was a period of time, and she said, "All you do is lust after her." And so, in order to calm Wanda down, he said, "I think I've reached a revelation, and I think we'll switch off time periods." But there wasn't an actual 24-hour period that he wasn't able to rape me.
So during this so-called break, he's responding to Wanda's objections about how lustful he is toward you.
Yes,
Is that correct? So what did he do to solve that problem?
he would set apart, like about every other night, he would have to spend with her. But it didn't last very long.
So he was setting up some sort of schedule.
Yes,
Okay. And the schedule was some form of alternating between you and Wanda.
yes,
Did he adhere to the schedule?
he did for a little while. But there was an occasion when he took me to get water with him, hike up to this underground stream and get water. And on the way up, he turned to me and he said how much he needed me to have sex with him right then and there, and that Wanda would never know, and that she would understand, and it would be okay, and that nobody would find out. It would be okay.
And did you say no to him?
Yes.
And how did that make you feel to say no to him on that occasion?
Wonderful.
Did the defendant ever try to convince you that it would be bad if he stopped having sex with you?
Yes.
What happened?
He said that one time he was trying to, and I bit him. And he said that if I ever did that again, he would never have sex with me again, and I would be the most miserable woman in the world. However, it didn't make a difference that he said that. It didn't stop him.
Elizabeth, would you agree that someone can be religious but not necessarily spiritual or Christian or Christ-like?
Yes,
And vice versa. Someone could be very Christian or Christ-like, but not necessarily religious or go to the church.
yes.
And what was the defendant like?
He was religious, but not spiritual, not Christ-like.
Did you observe him have empathy or display kindness toward others?
No,
Did you ever, Elizabeth, observe him to do an act of kindness or charity toward another person?
no,
Did he think highly of himself?
yes.
What was his opinion of himself?
That he was the Davidic king, that he was the Lord's servant, and he was doing the Lord's work.
Did you observe him use religion to help others, or did he use it to get what he wanted?
To get what he wanted.
How would he do this?
He used religion to get into the home of the Kemp family. He was looking for another young girl to kidnap. And he went to an LDS ward posing as an investigator. And there was a nice couple there that invited him into their home and invited him to dinner, at which point he saw a picture of their daughter. But he used religion to get into their home to pose as an investigator.
So would he use religion to get his needs met, his basic needs,
Yes,
food,
yes,
water?
yes,
What about for alcohol,
yes,
drugs,
yes,
sex?
yes,
Did you observe him use religion to get all of those things?
yes,
Did the defendant claim to receive revelation?
yes,
And would he give blessings and receive revelation?
yes.
Would he give blessings to you and to Wanda?
He gave them mainly to Wanda, but there were several occasions that he gave me a blessing.
What was the purpose of the blessings he would give? Elizabeth, what did you understand the purpose of giving the blessings to be?
Wanda would get very upset with him, and she would just become irate. And the only way to calm her down was to turn to her and to say that he needed to give her a blessing. And then in the blessing, he would just say what a wonderful daughter of God she was. And she was going to be the mother of Zion. And she was going to bring forth his heir to the throne, and just say what a queen she really was.
Would it have a calming effect on Wanda?
Yes,
Would he be able to get what he wanted through use of the blessings?
yes,
Did the defendant ever receive a revelation that he should give up anything?
no,
To give up sex,
no,
drugs,
no,
alcohol,
no,
pornography?
no,
Did the defendant ever have a religious fast from food, water, sex, alcohol, or drugs?
he had a fast from food before, but that also may have been because there was no food to eat.
Did he ever go on a word fast where he would not speak for long periods of time?
No,
Elizabeth, in your time with the defendant, did you ever observe the defendant feed the hungry,
no,
clothe the naked,
no,
or visit the sick or afflicted?
no,
Were you ever sick during this 9-month period of time?
there was a time when he gave me too much to drink, which I ended up vomiting up all over myself. And
Did he care for you?
no, he let me lie face down in my vomit for the entire night until I woke the next day.
So what did he say after he'd allowed you to sleep through the night with vomit on you the next morning?
He said that was showing my true state, that I was laying face down in my vomit.
Did he ever acknowledge that what he was doing was wrong?
No,
Did you ever question him on the inconsistency of his conduct with the principles of religion?
yes.
And what did he say?
He said that the world was wrong. He said the world was a wicked place and that I'd been brainwashed by the world and that he was the Lord's servant and he was doing the Lord's will.
And Elizabeth, you were how old at this time?
14.
In your observation of the defendant, Elizabeth, did you observe him to be manipulative?
Yes,
Did you observe him to try to manipulate Wanda?
yes,
Did he try to manipulate you?
yes,
Did you observe him manipulate or try to manipulate others?
yes.
And what would he try to do to manipulate others?
He would not. There was one younger man in particular who he worked at Wild Oats and he was,
Wild Oats, the grocery store?
the past grocery store, which has now been replaced by a Whole Foods.
Uh-huh.
He worked there and he used to just run things across a scanner so it looked like he was scanning them but wasn't. And he just put them in a bag and give them to Brian David Mitchell. And
Let me have you back up. So there was an individual working at this grocery store that the defendant would go to get groceries from him?
Yes.
And did he go to him because he could get advantage from him?
Yes.
And what was that advantage? He would scan them?
He wouldn't actually scan them. He just made it look like he was scanning them. So, in other words, he was stealing from the store.
And he was manipulating this employee in order to accomplish that?
Yes. The young man was not, he was on the edgy side. Like he dyed his hair dark and drank and did drugs, went to raves. That's just to the best of my knowledge how he was. And Brian never condemned him for doing it. And they would talk about spiritual related things or religious related things and talk about God and how God is no respecter of persons. And so because of his acceptance, I suppose this young man felt accepted by Brian, that he was willing to help Brian out.
Could the defendant turn religion on and off in order to get something he wanted?
Yes.
And did you observe him doing that?
Yes.
Did you observe him turn religion on or off to get sex or drugs or food or transportation?
Yes.
You've indicated the Kemp family. Was that an instance in which he turned religion on or off?
Yes.
This will be some two-voice practice at 120 words per minute, beginning with a question for the record. Mr. Lucian Barr, where do you live, sir?
201 Wood Heights Avenue. That's in Austell.
And where do you work?
Hales Jewelers.
What do you do for Hales Jewelers?
Sales.
What do you sell at Hales Jewelers?
Diamonds, other merchandise.
Where is Hales Jewelers located, or at least the store where you were?
12 South Main.
Main Street uptown?
Main Street uptown.
In Austell?
Yes.
How long have you been employed by Hales Jewelers, Mr. Barr?
Approximately 4.5 years.
Were you working for Hales Jewelers on February 28, 1978?
That's correct.
And were you working as a salesman for Hales Jewelers on that day?
That's correct.
By the way, do you recall the day of the week that was?
Tuesday.
What time did you go into work that day, Mr. Barr?
Approximately 9 o'clock.
And did you work all day?
Yes, sir.
Did anything unusual happen to you while you were working on Tuesday, February 28, 1978, at Hales Jewelers sometime in the middle of the afternoon?
Yes, approximately 4 o'clock.
About 4 o'clock in the afternoon?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Barr, just tell us in your own words just exactly what happened to you there at Hales Jewelers.
Approximately 4 o'clock, the defendant entered the store for the second time.
Excuse me just a minute. You said that the defendant entered the store for the second time. Do you recall the first time that you saw him enter the store?
Yes, sir. Approximately 11 o'clock that morning, he had been in.
Now speak up, Mr. Barr, so we can all hear you. Speak as loud as if you were talking to people in the back of the room.
Okay.
He came in about 11 o'clock.
About 11 o'clock.
And did you wait on him?
The first time I waited on him, he asked if he could see engagement rings. I sat down with him at the counter and showed him some things that we had already mounted. He didn't see anything that particularly interested him. So we keep loose stones in the safe, so I brought those out to see if I could find something that would interest him. I showed him a loose stone in the price range that he said. He said he was interested, but he wanted to look around. Said if he wanted to buy, he'd be back about 4 o'clock that afternoon.
Now, the first time around 11 o'clock, when he came in, how long did he stay there with you?
We were together about 15, 20 minutes.
And how close were you to him at that time?
Oh, about 1.5 feet, 2 feet.
Working across the counter?
Across the counter.
How was he dressed at 11 o'clock that morning? Do you recall?
Yes, you want me to describe the clothes?
Please, sir.
He had on brown pants, kind of a yellowish colored overcoat, and open neck knit shirt like color. I don't remember the color of the shirt, but it was a light colored shirt.
Did he have any type of coat on?
Yes, he had an overcoat, kind of a yellow colored overcoat.
Do you recall any other type of coat?
I think he had on an overcoat or a coat up under the overcoat.
Now, when he came back in about 4 o'clock that afternoon, was he wearing the same clothes?
Same clothes.
Did you recognize him as the man you had waited on a few hours previously?
The same person.
Did he come to see you or some other salesperson?
He came and asked for me. Earlier that morning, I had given him one of my calling cards, and he asked for me by name.
And did you wait on him about 4 o'clock that Tuesday afternoon?
That's correct.
Okay, this will be two voice at about 130 words per minute. For the record, your full name, sir, is?
Daniel F. Fleming,
Daniel, where do you presently reside?
Department of Corrections, 2515 Gist Street.
You are an inmate down at CCI?
Yes, sir.
And when were you sentenced?
I was sentenced approximately July 24
July of 1977?
of last year. Yes, sir.
And what was that sentence for?
Housebreaking and grand larceny.
And how much time did you receive?
10 years.
And did you break into somebody's house? Is that why you received that sentence?
No, sir.
What did you do?
I broke into a place of business on Woodland Drive.
Someone's place of business?
Yes, sir.
Have you been involved in a number of criminal activities here in this county?
Yes, sir.
With reference to State's Exhibit 1 that you previously identified as being in the kitchen, does that reflect the area around the stove that you testified about earlier?
Yes, sir.
What type of stove was it?
4-burner and an oven underneath it, and then a fan overhead with an opening between.
There was an exhaust fan overhead.
Yes, sir.
There was a countertop the length of the stove.
Yes, sir.
Was it an electric stove or gas?
Electric.
When you left the house that night, who was driving and where did you go?
I was driving and we proceeded out Carousel Road, and my brother there threw the lacquer thinner can out, into a brush pile, which was, I figured, too close to the scene of the crime. And I had to make an about face in the car and go back and pick up the lacquer thinner can, which was subsequently taken to my house. And then my brother put it in his car and took it with some other stuff off in the truck and eventually dumped it in a Dempsey dumpster miles away.
And did you get to work the next morning?
Yes, sir.
And what did you do when you went to work the next morning? Who were you working for the following morning?
Mr. Poulter's. We were working on Mr. Poulter's house.
That was the one that had the fire previously?
Yes, sir.
And did Mr. Poulter's come by that day?
Yes, sir.
And did you have any conversation? Did you hear any conversation that anyone may have had with Mr. Poulter's?
Yes, sir. I heard Mr. Poulter's tell my brother David that it was a very nice job. It could have been more complete, that it could have burnt to the ground. But all in all, it was a very nice job.
And are you aware, were you privy to any conversation regarding the payment for having burned down that residence?
No, sir. I was not privy to that conversation. My brother told me that we would receive the money.
Mr. Fleming, just tell the members of the jury what you heard Mr. Poulter's say, not what you heard your brother say Mr. Poulter's said. Now, were you a party to any of the conversations regarding the payment for the burning of that house?
No, sir. I had my own private conversation when I phoned Mr. Poulter's at work, and I asked Mr. Poulter's directly for the money, and he said that the insurance had not been paid off yet.
Now, what was the amount that was to have been paid?
$800.
And your brother David was handling this transaction?
Yes, sir. But at the time, I was hard-pressed for money, and I called Mr. Poulter's directly.
Mr. Fleming, in all of these cases of criminal activities that you have been involved in before, have you ever testified on behalf of the state?
No, sir.
Today's appearance on the witness stand is the first time that you have ever testified for the state?
Yes, sir.
Have you ever been charged by the state for your participation in this criminal activity, burning down of the Penny residence?
No, sir, I have not.
Do you have an understanding with the solicitor's office in regard to your testimony today?
Yes, sir, I do.
Why don't you be upfront and tell the jury what that understanding is?
I have another charge pending, which is also a housebreaking and grand larceny charge, which is to be run concurrent with a 10-year sentence I am now doing. And I am also to be transferred from a maximum detention institute to a minimum detention institute.
Sir, what about any charges that may arise out of this incident?
I have been granted immunity for any charges that may arise out of this.
I believe I may have asked you earlier, but have you ever been involved in any breaking or entering into a personal residence?
No, sir.
Private homes?
No, sir.
Has all of your prior criminal conduct involved places of business?
Yes, sir.
Are you telling the truth?
Yes, sir.